Zoom is on.
If you record it, then if we miss a week, we can catch up.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so the way that's a great thing that Marty just mentioned. So again, I'm Lauren, and then you guys introduce yourselves. I know so many of you, and feel free that if you raise your hand to ask a question, which I really welcome, restate your name for me, okay? Just so that it will, because the more I use it, the more I'll learn it. So the way that I run this class is strongly on discussion. Okay, that allows me to meet you where you are, because this unique group of people that has gathered here is unique from any other group that will ever gather again, specifically because of the questions and the thoughts and the concepts that you bring to the table. All right, so as I'm going through, I don't have an agenda. That doesn't mean I don't have a significantly researched and detailed outline. It just means that I hold on to that loosely. And if we cover something that's not on the outline, I'm okay with that. If we get further in the outline than I thought, I'm okay with that. If we don't get far enough, I'm okay with that. Does that make sense? Okay. The number one thing that I find when I'm teaching a class on religion or theology or anything to do with abstract concepts with big language and polysyllabic terminology is that people do this when I say, does that make sense? They go, and then guess what I hear later? All right, now that we're not sitting here on a Sunday morning where it's probably a little bit rude to raise your hand in the middle of a sermon and say, what was that word you just used? Here you can. Stop me. Lauren, I don't know what that word means. That concept you just used, that doesn't make sense to me. Can we explain it more? Feel free, gather up your substance and advocate for yourself. This is what I would tell high school students, specifically high school girls in the South, who would tend to sit quietly and nod profusely. Okay, and I would say, start here, start advocating for yourself with me, who's on your side, and then when you get out into the bigger world, not the real world, because school is still real, when you get into the bigger world, you can have practice against someone who's on your side. All right, I want you to walk away with something. You're not gonna walk away with everything I present to you. I want you to have fun. Laughter is great. I'm gonna show some, maybe potentially some interesting clips so that we can kind of see how media presents the idea of religion. I am not going to tell you what religion is. I know I spoiled the whole entire course. Give me back my $20, I'm leaving. Mostly because it is a very broad and radical kind of big abstract concept. What I want to do is get you thinking that question. That's my goal. I want you to think about what you think religion is. I want you to come into contact with and confrontation with the comfortable definitions you've used for religion. Because that will reveal a lot about where there's avenues to learn, where there's avenues to be encouraged, and where there's avenues to confess and repent. Not to me, you don't have to do it to me, you can do it, you've got the one-to-one, okay? But I just want you to know that. So with that sort of overlay of how I run the class and how I'm expecting us to engage, any questions for the good of the order? Okay, there are no dumb questions. Okay, don't tell that to my kids, because sometimes I say, that was a dumb question. But there are no dumb questions. Please ask, don't hesitate. And if you're not a speaker type person, jot it down on a piece of paper, email me. I'm not gonna hand out any notes. For me, what I would really love is just learning by rigorous discussion and engagement and listening. If you want to take notes, I encourage it, because that's how you'll best learn, copying stuff down. At the end of the course, if you would like my teaching outline, which may give you some heart palpitations when you see the length of the footnotes, I will be happy to do that, okay? I told all my students to stop tapping. And I said, after each section on world religions, I will give you whatever teaching outline I have, because I do not want you bogged down with what did she say so I can reiterate it later in life. Because I want you to start fleshy engaging with the stuff. All right. Ooh, we have a screen. I talked long enough to have a screen. Good job. Were you worried? This is Daniel. This is my husband. Two of my children are downstairs, and the third is teenagering at home. I'm turning it into a verb because that's the only way I can describe it. Okay. Introduce self and background. Check. Handout materials. Okay, did you guys get, in your registration, did you get a PDF file of some sort? Nothing? Okay. All right, I will make sure that you get it. You don't need it today, and you don't have to read it, because I have withdrawn chunks that we will look at on the screen, and we'll talk about it right here, but it gives you more context. So when you pull a quote out of something, you're leaving behind the rest of the book, right? So unless you read the book the context gets lost if we just pull out the quotes. I'll explain the context, but if you have that PDF, and I'll ask Christy to assist me in getting that to you so you can have your own copy, you can read that on your own. But I will be discussing certain aspects of that text. So if you never read it, you'll probably be fine. I don't want you to have tons of homework. Okay, I want you to have fun. Remember, this is about having fun. We learn best when we're having fun in a creative and free environment. Okay, so I will make a note about that. And then, have you been able to locate that? Okay. Community, has anyone watched the show Community? It is very, very funny. I find it very funny, but I can have sort of a sardonic, kind of off-color sense of humor. But anyway, there's an episode where it's a Christmas party. And in the group that is attending this community college is about 6 individuals who attend a community college. They're 6 unlikely friendships, technically. They gather together to study Spanish. They become fast friends. And in one of the episodes, the more kind of boldly stated Christian one of the group decides that she's going to throw a Christmas party and runs into the fact that no one else in the group is actually Christian. And what I think is a comical way of sort of opening up, talking about religion like that. And it's interesting to watch how media is portraying her as she's realizing that other people whom she loves have these beliefs that seem to come into conflict with her own belief. So Daniel is looking for it. This was a surprise to you, and it was in my outline. Just telling you that it was in my outline.
So I may have to just turn the volume on here and
Okay.
Okay, who sat at my desk?
A quick question. Are you all coming to my Christmas party right after the final, or are you stopping home to change into your Christmas outfits?
I guess I could wear one of my Hanukkah sweaters.
Ah, Annie, I didn't know you weren't, Christian.
Yep. One might even say I'm Jewish.
Oh, that's good for you. That's wonderful. I respect all religions of the world.
I'm Muslim.
Jehovah's Witness.
Atheist.
The Lord is testing me.
Guys, this is a subject that breeds conflict. Can we please do
What religion are you, Jeff?
I'm agnostic.
Agnostic. Lazy man's atheist. I'm born again.
Oh.
We had a rebirthing ritual in my friend's hot tub. I'm now a level 5 laser lotus in my Buddhist community.
That does not sound like Buddhism. Are you sure you're not in a cult?
Just by asking me that question, you put me back down to a level 4. You now owe me 2,000 energon cubes.
Do you know how foolish you sound right now? What else do you believe in? Blood transfusions?
Jehovah's Witnesses are a type of Christian, right, Troy?
Yeah, but we don't celebrate birthdays or Christmas, and we can't drink. But it helps.
So you're like a Muslim. Assalamu alaikum.
Shamalama ding dong.
The whole episode is actually quite entertaining, and I love to see how culture represents the world, my world, right? And so we have here 6 distinct personalities. I'm going to slip over and turn on that light again. We have 6 distinct personalities with 6 different religious traditions represented. What were the religious traditions represented? Yeah, a form of Buddhism, Judaism, atheism, Jehovah's Witness, agnostic. Now, what's interesting is how many here think that agnosticism and atheism are religions? Atheism, it's on the table. And one of the things about atheism being on the table, and I'd be happy to actually teach a spiritual university on atheism, just kidding, I'm plugging future events, is that it could be, atheistic claims can be protected by the freedom of religion. Okay, that's one reason. Now, agnosticism is something really interesting because it tends to sometimes perform a catch-all of like everyone else who thinks that there's something but they don't know what it is, and it can be sort of dismissed as, well, it's kind of just sort of like, well, I don't know, whatever. But there are very thoughtful agnostics that literally are not going to claim a certain institutional interpretation of whatever that is. Okay, now interestingly, between agnosticism and atheism is something called Autheism, which is people who have come out of the institution, still kind of resonate with some of those aspects, but don't want to go back in, but they know that whatever that was isn't necessarily it. Okay, so it's still distinguishing from agnosticism, but there is, and it's A/theism rather than atheism. Yes. Humanism is, well, this was one of the aspects of atheism that actually allows it to start to function like a religion, because it has a technical, I'm really defining faith system here in a technical sense. It has hope and faith in humanity, in the goodness of humanity. And so therein, that humanistic component can actually become sort of a budding belief system. We can make this world better. Now, the problem is that sometimes humanism in the Protestant tradition gets dragged through the mud as some sort of works righteousness. And if you're into humanism and doing what's good for the world, or maybe even trying to better yourself so that you can be a good, solid, functional member of society, it's sort of like, well, you're trying so hard, you're probably trying to earn God's love and righteousness. And so humanism can be dragged through the mud in some Protestant circles. I'm here to tell you that you can be Protestant and humanist, and even a little bit Confucian as well. I love Confucius. Anyway, okay, so that is a fun way of sort of kind of just getting in and talking about religion. So now what I want to do is, I wonder if this will work, but I'm looking around. I think this is probably a crowd that's smarter than I am. So, but we're going to do it anyway to see if something interesting pops up. I'm going to move this so that maybe I can get it so that everyone can see it without me having to have my back. Is this a good location? Okay. What I want to do, oh, that does that. Okay, even better. Okay, what I want to do is I want to ask you, what's religion? And I want you to give me adjectives. Describe it for me. Silence. Belief systems, okay? If I spell something wrong, it's because I have easel spelling disorder, which is as soon as I get in front of a group, I lose all ability to spell. It's supposedly all my really smart friends that are also professors at universities, they call it, it's a thing, it's real. It's called whiteboard disease. You get in front and you're just like, I don't even know how to spell Lauren anymore. Okay, belief systems. Organized, okay.
Searching.
For what? Oh, searching. Awesome. Searching as religion. Okay, great. Structure. What is it? Business? Business. Like business. Yeah. Okay, wait, here's one of the Buisin, right? Yeah. Personal? Hmm. Oh, yes, there, yeah, okay. That is great, excellent. Way to advocate. Polity would be like the political structure of the church. It has like, it's maybe a more detailed understanding of the organization, like, yes, right. I'm actually gonna write that down. Ooh, thank you. I spelled ecclesiastical, but could not spell business. That's because my world is, ooh. Okay. Dualism, connection to the divine. Anything else?
Wrestling with the divine.
Wrestling with the divine. What was yours? Okay. Ooh, I don't know if they stick. Oh, yes, they do. Okay. Wrestling with the divine. I'm just going to do a line here and write. Okay, and then say yours again, Marty.
Inclusion, exclusion. You're either in or you're out. Good and evil. Did I do it okay? I was like, is that supposed to be a Z somewhere in there? Ostracize. Okay.
Well, that's interesting. Make it O-U-T outreach.
Oh. Yeah, that's good. Very creative. I like that. E? No E. No E. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Okay, just so I can represent everyone here. Questioning. We did do, well, searching has, okay, the one difference is searching has an active bodily component, questioning is more of an inward sort of posture. So it would be in the same group, probably.
Fanaticism, is this a word?
Fanaticism, yeah. Extremism? Which one? All right. Judgment, judgmental, judgment like judgment, or judgment as in like a human judgment? Both. Okay, so here I'm gonna do and then judgmental I'm gonna leave because that's sort of the horizontal aspect. What else? Anything else? Unified or unifying? Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay. That's a lot of terms. Okay, so fanaticism, I'm gonna drop that down here. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, good, I like that one. Okay. Maybe. It depends. Some people would say, oh no. Power. Okay, I'm gonna cut us off there. I think we could keep going. I think we could spend the next 60 minutes probably talking about adjectives, and eventually it would be a counseling session, which is totally fine. I'm up for it, but my office hours are 12 to 3, Monday through Thursday. All right, so one thing that I wanna know is, from where were you drawing your adjectives about religion? What were you actually describing? What church were you actually describing? Not nativity, don't say nativity. Think bigger church. Christian. What I love about this is when we start getting into connection with the divine, afterlife, inclusion, exclusion, member, punishment and judgment. No one said reward. No one said heaven. Now I know where all your minds are. Okay. Yeah, I know afterlife, we could have an eternal torment that is conscious. That is a doctrine in the Christian church. It's a fun one to talk about. Anyway, it's on my mind because Jesus uses Gehenna like 4 times in the gospel this coming Sunday. So I'm like, yeah, do it, go. Gehenna, which is an actual location southwest of Jerusalem that was not a very popular place, but historically it carried the mythology of an actual burning hell. Yeah. So it's one of those ones, and my commentary was like, those of you who like to claim blah, 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 and I was like, me, because that's how I talk to my books when they when they mess with my ideologies. But anyway, yeah, it's an interesting passage. But what we're defining here is actually a very specific understanding, because by adding just one of those terms, specifically connection to the divine, we've excluded religions that don't have a concept of a divine figure or figures. Okay? Yes.
Buddha did not ever speak about the spiritual aspect, but in the stories about his life, he was one who asked, can you tell me about God? And Buddha says, how can I do that? You don't even understand the question.
Yes, and isn't that embedded in his understanding that speculation is pointless?
Well, yeah, and then the other thing is, the story about him pointing to the moon.
Yeah.
Don't look at the finger, but I'm pointing.
Yeah.
And I've always thought Christianity never got beyond the finger.
That is an excellent point. I love that. Though
The implication is there's something there.
Yes.
But it's up to you to experience.
Yes, and that would be the Dharma. And that would be enlightenment, right? The Dharma's Dharma, right? This was my most fun part of teaching high schoolers, is when I would use one word to make a full sentence. And they would look at me and say, "You're doing it again, Reverend Larkin." But one word, dharma, dharma's dharma. And that's the thing, is that it's dharma is this, in Buddhism, it tends to present itself as this sort of living essence that produces itself and then gives you something. But it itself is, but then when you go through, I don't want to say go through the processes, that would be disrespectful.
The point is,
Yeah.
it grows to enlightenment for you, being completely different.
Yeah, absolutely.
And once you've achieved it,
Yes.
you're not able to use it. You can only live it like that.
And that partakes of the idea that Dharma, as you said, it's not the same. And well, now I'm getting into Taoism.
I will argue that if you have a Christian God, the two people can have it, and nobody can do it.
And I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I think that's what I would dub the encounter with God in the event of faith. Okay, it's not going to be the same. What it is for me, this is why we get into hot water when we start saying, what you need to do for your spiritual practice is what works for me. And then we start creating ethical practices. We start creating practices that are based off of one's own life. And I actually kind of think that the majority of ethics coming out of the philosophical tradition is almost what makes sense to that one person. Okay, yeah.
You asked a question, you made some comment about, and I only caught the first half of it.
He'll come back.
You were talking at the very beginning.
I take spiritual from the woman
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of exploring myself.
Okay, John.
I can't remember.
Okay. Can John Mark ask this question?
So, when you said exclude religions that do not believe or posit a divine, I think there's a hard line that's walked oftentimes between religion and a practical philosophy.
Yeah.
And so when I think of Buddhism, for example, or Stoicism, even if they have religious aspects, I often think of them as a practical philosophy or a practical way of living versus maybe a religious observance.
Right. I think that's a really good point. And I do think that the ideas blend when we move from contemplating existence from a sort of top-down fluid motion and a bottom-up fluid motion. But I'm going to move from that onto what I wanted to just kind of circle it back around. And that's not to be dismissive, John Mark. Are you okay with that?
Of course.
Okay. But what John Mark offered in terms of like philosophical practice versus like religion is really insightful because the two blend. And in fact, we do have a blended category for study called religious philosophy. Okay. So it gets tricky. The waters get very, very, very muddy. The philosophy of religion and the religion of philosophy, we could start doing that all night. But what I wanted to do here was highlight, there's a number of terms here that are very particular to our understanding of what religion is. But if we were to take this as a lens and then start using it as a plumb line, we might declare some things not religions. Do you know why I'm highlighting this point? Do you know what happened in the 18th century with Europe getting in boats and going across seas and encountering other cultures with other religions? Do you know world religions is a term that's relatively new? Because they were like, we are European Christians. Behold our greatness. We are in relationship with God, the one God. And then they got in ships. And then they came across to these well-cultivated, very intellectual, sophisticated civilizations that weren't Christian. So then there was a scurry and a moment where we needed to figure out, well, what in the world, well, we need to classify, well, clearly we have the religion, and then maybe some of those other monotheistic traditions can get a little inclusion, but then these other ones, and right alongside Darwin's understanding of evolution, you get religious evolution, as in religions grow from, well, pagan, I'm using that word specifically, I don't actually ascribe to it, pagan, into polytheistic, into monotheistic, but not our monotheos. Okay, and then, well, Christianity and Jesus. But that's why, because when we start holding up plumb lines that this is what religion is, you guys were too smart for me though, because you had very broad terms in here. All right, when I'm dealing with a little bit more of an environment where people have been more force-fed a specific understanding of what religion is, who God is, what God is, the only right way, this list is way shorter. Okay, so you almost threw a wrench in my plan, but eventually I got those terms out from you. Okay, so when we're engaging with the idea of what is religion, we have to understand that we're carrying all this baggage with us. Some of this stuff brings us comfort. I love the idea of an active and vibrant, embodied afterlife. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I will tell you right now, as academic as I am, I'm like, oh, sign me up. Okay? Because I'm like, what the heck? God is big and possibility is real. Okay? But there are things in here that have wounded us. Judgmentalism, fanaticism, legalism. You put some wounds on here. You put some good things and you put some wounds on here. And so as we're navigating over the next 6 weeks, be aware of that. Okay, this is a pastoral class as much as it is an academic what is religion class that never comes to an answer because I'm mean like that. But you can do some self-reflection because and especially right now when we watch what's happening with institutional religion, specifically institutionalized Christianity, there's a lot of pain. People are tired of being told what to think. They're tired of being told what to do in the right way and only this, and getting our knickers all screwed up in a bunch because someone didn't do the thing right and the right third candle was lit before the second left candle, and we have a very loose environment here, so I'm just like pulling from the air. But we have baggage that we're bringing into this discussion, and it's going to get rattled. That cage is going to rattle, that box that you like packed up all your religious wounding and like tucked down into the deepest part of your intellectual basement and back into that deep back closet of your intellectual basement. I'm just gonna go straight there. I'm letting you know right now, we're gonna pull that up because it's okay. And I want this to be a safe environment, okay? And you only have to talk if you want to, and you only have to share if you want to. But I do ask you just to be open to the realizing that we are bringing some stuff to the table, okay? What I wanna do now is I'm a big fan of breaks. I think people learn best when they also get a moment to rest and stretch and rejuvenate and maybe get a drink of water. Why don't we take a few minutes now and just go ahead and like 5 minutes, just sort of hang out, chat, go to the bathroom, take a drink, give me dirty looks. I'm fine with it. I've got a teenager. No.
That'll answer some questions.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's very.
Yeah. Jesus says very abstract things, and rarely he speaks more about the present. Yeah.
We had Christianity started as a community.
Yes, it did.
It became a philosophy.
Yes.
became an organization.
Yep.
And it became a business.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I agree with that. Yeah, and it became a means to power. Because it was a way that like young poor boys could like find some.
The minute Rome smashed Jerusalem in 79 and wiped out that Jesus song,
Yeah.
Paul won.
Yes.
Not because he was right.
Right.
By default.
Yes. Yes.
And that shit.
Yes, and Paul is actually easier to digest if you're looking for finding a doctrine that you could push where you're let off the hook for everything.
Oh, yeah.
And the emphasis on making the victim forgive the victimizer. I mean, it's perfect setup.
Well, and that's the whole point of the story of their fathers and mothers.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
That's why I picked
Yeah. 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 Well, and that's why we can say other things.
Yeah.
And I even tell people here.
That you said something else.
Well, yes, and I actually say here that if you feel like joining me in affirming the faith, like you don't have to say it. The words aren't magic.
Yeah.
You know. The September equinox has just happened.
Yes.
Yep, I meditate outside, and so I sit under the stars, and every morning, same time, so I see how everything rotates. But I have an app on my phone because every so often I'm like, what's that? And I have to look. But yeah, so I get updates on my watch, which tells me when cool things are happening. The other night when it was the harvest moon, Daniel was like, best go get in your garden. I was like, going to sleep. All right. We're going to gather up again, and there's a quote on the board, and that's the biggest the font I could get without it going to a second slide. However, I have copies. So we can read in multiple places. This is a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche. Is anyone familiar with the philosopher, ooh, that's my copy. You were trying to take my copy. Marty, you tentatively, hesitantly raised your hand.
Well, I've heard the name, and my understanding is it is out of his philosophy, theology, religion, the actual concept of God is there.
Oh, yeah. I actually used this in a sermon, that parable of the madman. I'll let you guys share that, okay? Share. I do, considering that you've shared life, I think a piece of paper might work fine. And since there's 3 of you in here, I'm going to give you an extra copy so the 3 of you could share. And then, oh, well, yeah. Oh, you,
I can.
the motion on the floor for me to be quiet for a moment. I receive it. I was gonna read it to you, but if you would like to read silently and then, yeah, I like to give multiple ways. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I figured if you could read along while I read it out loud, then you'd get 2 forms, okay? So this is from his text, Beyond Good and Evil, okay? Zoom people, you don't have this. You did, thank you. Okay. To ordinary men, writes Friedrich Nietzsche, finally the great majority who exist for service and general utility and who may exist only for that purpose. Religion gives an invaluable contentment with their nature and station, manifold peace of heart, and ennobling of obedience, one piece of joy and sorrow, more to share with their fellows, and some transfiguration of the whole everydayness, the whole lowliness, the whole half-bestial poverty of their souls. Religion and the religious significance of life sheds sunshine over these perpetual drudges and makes their own sight tolerable to them. It has the effect which an Epicurean philosophy usually has on sufferers of a higher rank, refreshing, refining, as it were making the most use of suffering, ultimately even sanctifying and justifying. Perhaps nothing in Christianity and Buddhism is so venerable as their art of teaching even the lowliest to set themselves through piety in an apparently higher order of things, and thus to preserve their contentment with the real order within which they live hard enough lives and necessarily have to. Yeah, I actually am a big fan of Friedrich Nietzsche. He is an existentialist philosopher. He was raised, I believe, I'm going to phone in a friend. John Mark, do you have a working biography of Friedrich Nietzsche in your mind?
He was born and raised in Germany someplace.
Lutheran pastor father, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay, so he ends up just decrying all things Lutheranism. Okay, he's done with it. Becomes atheist. And most people think he's just angry. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. That's the worst way to read Nietzsche. Nietzsche mourns the loss of faith. He loses something of himself in the loss of faith, but he just can't ascribe to it anymore. Okay, now the record says, and John Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but at the end of his life, he ends up sort of losing his mind and dies as he's protecting the life of a horse, right?
Yeah, and he was in an institution for quite a long time.
Yeah. And his works today are often appropriated by various groups of people to prove their point, much like the work of Karl Marx as well. Okay, so you can use Nietzsche to prove a point that religion is ridiculous if you want to, but you have to really read Friedrich Nietzsche to kind of get the bigger view. However, his criticism specifically of the Christian church, some of the best. Why would I say that as someone who finds their economic livelihood working for the Christian church? Right, some remnant of that which was good.
So I'm thinking all of the, it's making people who are suffering feel better about it.
Yes, okay, good point. Yes, yes. The sanctification and justification of suffering. What happens when we sanctify and justify suffering? Yes. Power. Yep. This section of Beyond Good and Evil is actually really profound because he pulls to task a bunch of the powerful as well, who use religion as a means to subject people. What else? Anything in here pop up? Anything you have questions about?
I think self-criticism is really important, and not just from an outsider point of view, but an internal point of view. Karl Rahner comes to mind, who's extremely critical of the Catholic Church and was all but ostracized because of it.
Yeah, this is a good, excellent point. Very excellent point. If you're in a building, okay, me standing here, all of us sitting here, do we know what the foundation looks like? No one on the building committee say anything. Right, you don't know. But someone standing in maybe a different perspective, maybe outside, or might be like, that looks wonky. We have to, one of the things I love about talking about religions is the way that you can start to hear the perceptions of your own religion to other people. And those perceptions aren't just to be dismissed with well, you just don't understand it. That's an easy way out. When we engage someone like Nietzsche or anyone else, when we listen to Gen Z or millennials complain about the church, it's best for some of us to stop and listen. Stop and listen, right? Sometimes it's reactive, but you learn how to sort of parse through that stuff. Okay, so entering into dialogue and being able to listen to people who are not part of your membership, your group, your in-group, your included group, sometimes can help you correct the fractures in your edifice, right? Sometimes we feel great and then we go to the doctor. And doctor says, oh, everything's not great under the hood here, right? We need that. We need other perspectives that kind of help us along. It's why we can't go it alone. It can't be, when we look at religion, and as Christians, or at least those of us influenced with a Western Christian perspective of just me and God, Jesus is my co-pilot, okay? When it just becomes that, okay, and I'm not going to receive information from other people, I'm going to have a very truncated relationship with whatever this God is, as well as potentially be existing on a diet of Cheetos and Diet Coke. Okay? It's really important for us to see ourselves, even as Christians, in a community of not Christians, and alongside people of the Buddhist tradition or Muslim tradition or Judaism, right? Like, we have to see ourselves in dialogue. We don't ever have to become Buddhist. We don't have to become Muslim to accept Muslims and I'm blanking. Oh, the Buddhists, thank you. I was like, what was the religion? I have to keep it balanced. We don't have to become them to accept them, right? This is so great. That is so great. When we listen to other traditions, specifically Christianity in the West, in American Christianity, we tend to have a very high view of a very particular life and not a very high view of, let's say, mosquito life. I mean, and granted, I will kill those things as fast as possible. They come near me, I hear them, and I'm like, smack, 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 smack. I love life. I value everything but the mosquito. But when we, snakes and spiders, right? Who here has a, okay, John Mark, hold on. What are the animal kingdom participants that you would rather just say adios? Wasp, spiders, roaches. La cucaracha, la cucaracha. I would say goodbye to alligators in a heartbeat, mostly because they're dinosaurs. Anything that can survive through that time. Yeah, right, roaches, yeah. But anyway, we all have those things. Buddhism asks us to reconsider that. Okay, and that was one of the most challenging things when I was reading the 5 virtues, and it was the value of life, and it was like, if you intend to, there's a distinction, I believe, and anyone knows more than me, please correct me, but there's a distinction between accidentally killing bug life and intentionally killing bug life. My students love the part about like intentionally choking a large animal. This is written in a different time, no guns. Right? But they were like, how do you intentionally take the air from a horse? I'm like, well, a lot of effort. It's really intentional if you're going to go after a big animal. But what I liked about Buddhism is that even though I value the animals that I think are pretty or cute or majestic, or I like to, they function with me in some way, Buddhism actually asked me to think about that little buzzing life. Yes?
The thing that happens if we don't look around, if we're not familiar with other religions. You see, there's only one, there's only
Yes.
one way,
Yes.
and ours is the right way.
Yes.
And
Yeah, and that's one of the things of the text that I have you read is when Jesus says, I am the way. What does the mean? Like one of them? The only? Anyway, yes. Okay, John Mark, question from John Mark.
I was going to ask, or state, I think Protestantism, especially in this country, is unique in this regard, as we have, say, like 50,000 Protestant denominations in the United States, and we all view each other very critically, even though we all claim the same type of name. And it's still an outside group, despite the fact that we use the same nomenclature.
Yeah. Yeah, we get hardcore into the right and wrong. We get really deep into the right and wrong. We have a word for wrong. What's the word that we have in Christianity for wrong?
Sin.
Okay, yeah, there's a heretic! Burn her! We love fire too, heresy and fire. So can I tell you a fun story from church history? This is my favorite. Yeah, exactly. Luther was excommunicated a number of times, and he had a drawer full of papal excommunications. It's just like, oh, look, another one. Put that in there. One of my favorite stories from church history is there was once a theologian, I forget the names of these people, but the story stuck with me. There was this theologian who the church just loved and loved and loved and loved and loved and loved. And then he died, and sainthood and all that stuff. And then like 50 years, 100 years later, another theologian comes along and says, hey, remember that guy we loved? Guess what? Heretic! What? You want to know what the church did? Well, dug up his bones, set him on fire. Oh, that's what you do, you burn them. Well, yeah. People just trying to figure out this thing called religion and getting their bones dug up and yeah, it was, yes. A voiceless trial. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is my favorite story because it shows you to what end, which is none, the church will go to in order to make sure that it has all the right thought. But that is a tricky and difficult thing to manage. Do you know that this is part of my ordination vows to my church and my congregants sitting before me? I am not trying to control what you think. I know based off of how you love not your perfection, not your amazingness, not even necessarily what you give, but don't hesitate to give. But necessarily what we think impacts what we love. And if we think other people are worthy of respect and dignity, we're going to treat them just that way. And that's going to demonstrate where we are. But there's no way that I can sit here and make sure. I would have to give you tests. I would have to give you tests, weekly tests. After you left church, I'd have to say, all right, now write down the 3 points that I made. Good luck, because no one knows. But anyway, you know what I'm saying? Like, I would have to evaluate what you're thinking and then correct you and get you to think like whom? Yeah, and I don't want anyone to have that torture aside from me. Okay? Like, I just don't. Yes?
Well, it strikes me as what you're saying. The church history is nothing but power.
Yeah, one could even say potentially narcissistic.
Ask teacher professors whether Christ came to establish a community of faith or a hierarchical institution. And he said, by nature, humans require the structure. Without it, we have anarchy.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to remember that that structure is human.
That's awesome. Okay, so that is a great segue into sort of, and I'm looking at the clock, and so we've got about 30 minutes, but I'm not opposed to ending early. It is dark out, and I've had like a bowl of grapes today. So I'm going on sugar energy right now. It's gonna run out. But anyway, when we go to define what religion is, we have to resist the temptation to put hard and fast adjectives onto it. Those adjectives are going to come from ourselves. They're going to come from our experiences, our relationship with various churches, our wounds, the things that bring us the most joy. Okay? When we think about religion, I think, and Marty put great words to it, it's best to see it as a skeleton of whatever tradition is trying to gather up the people who ascribe to that, okay? We gather here in Nativity on Sundays to hear a particular message, one way or the other. Maybe not all the components are everyone's favorite, but we gather here because we all sort of ascribe to a similar something. Right? Most of us would declare in one form or another some sort of Christian identity. Okay, so you come here because there's someone who sits in an office with a Pope egg on her door, says priest in charge, and I have a few degrees and I can help you as you walk this journey. I can guide and direct. Okay, as someone who has tried to learn to play an instrument all by herself, I got to a point and I stopped. I'm not that good at the cello. Okay, why did I stop? I didn't have anyone teaching me. I didn't have anyone walking alongside me. I didn't have anyone correcting the little this or that or giving me advice or maybe even just encouragement. You're doing great. Yeah, the path just got, and I couldn't, so I didn't ditch it. The cello's still there, and I still would like to find time to do it. But there's something about gathering with others who ascribe to what you believe, and a system loosely held onto can be of great value and blessing as long as we don't try to empiricize it or use it to colonize other traditions or use it as a lens through which we judge other people as inferior, right? Religion isn't a bad thing. It's where we can take our spirituality to an actual place and put it out there. This is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Yeah, I totally agree. Or interesting. Let's meet at 1 p.m. on Tuesday, and we're going to talk about this thought that you're having, right? But that's what religion is. I think Marty said it so well. It's a structure. It gives you a paddock to run in, to use horse imagery, right? Would you let your horses out? Now I feel like I'm quoting from Prince, or the artist formerly known as Prince. Okay, would you let your horses out without fencing? No, the paddock actually makes the horse feel kind of like, okay, Okay, I can go here. So we play in this paddock that is our religion, but it doesn't need to be a hierarchy of things. Yeah, yes, they can be confining. Absolutely. So much. So much. One of the best things that I ever read as I was learning the history of this church was from one of the original founders or thinkers, progenitors, whatever word you want to use, Bruce Jones. Do you know what Bruce Jones wanted this house to be? A house of faith. Or a house where more than one tradition would gather together. Maybe not even overlapping services, but where one location would maybe share, not be the church where it's just Christian, just sanctified as such, but this more robust understanding of a representation of community. I fell in love with it when I read it. I thought, wow, what a thing to conceive. That this could be a place where multiple groups would use and share, thus learning from each other.
I disagree.
Okay.
Jesus' primary objective is to separate church, the Jewish religion power structure, from people.
Yeah.
All the people basically, you do not need intercession.
Okay.
You
Absolutely. I agree with that.
And while I appreciate the paddock, and we're raised in the paddock context, the ability to step out of the paddock and deal directly with God is both liberating and terrifying.
Yes, and I appreciate that. But notice that you added a component to my thought that I didn't actually say. I didn't say that this mediates.
Religion is fixed.
Okay, fair enough.
Now, big, little game, a true religion wants you to move beyond it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right. And I see a lot of religions never opening the gate.
Is that religion's fault or is that humanity's fault?
No, depends on how you define religion. Take a point.
Yeah.
Back to the ego. If we all moved beyond the gate, you wouldn't have a job.
Maybe that's a great idea.
Well, it would be nice. The objective is not to exclude you,
right?
Your thinking, or your teaching, or whatever. Else. The objective is to use it as a growth mechanism to facilitate the transition to.
Sure.
I'm thinking how he just said we were out of job, but I'm thinking of what Jesus did was he walked among all sorts of groups of people.
Always.
Just teaching, just talking.
Yeah.
Not teaching, talking. And you either listened, understood, rapid, but he kept having a following, and there was no gates. He didn't have a gate. He didn't have a structure. He just wandered. And to me, that's part of what I'm sensing.
Yeah. Yeah. His answer, how long must I stay with you? That is great. I love that pushback because imagery always eventually fails. We're not horses, right? We're not horses. We do get to sometimes opt to leave. Did you know that in Germany, this is from my paper, in Germany, they established a law at the kind of like the turn of the century where it was okay to leave your church. It was illegal to withdraw your membership from a church. I think next vestry meeting, we need to talk about it. But anyway, it's interesting because we can leave. And the thing that I like about Christianity and its denominations is that within the umbrella of Christianity, you can experience other interpretations of the same message. and you find one that kind of fits. And then you don't need to use it as a way of, and denominations and religion are different. We're on that same page there? Okay, because sometimes people say, well, I'm part of the Catholic religion. And I'm like, well, we're part of the same religion. I've heard that too from, on the Protestant side, that, oh, so sad, they're not Christian. That is just really kind of vile language. But anyway, there is a way for us to have structure without having it to be condemnatory structure or authoritarian structure, or what not my favorite guy, but the guy that I'm studying, his terminology for it is religious totalitarianism. And I was like, well, there you go. Play that in Scrabble. But we don't need to have a totalitarian presence with our structure. If people want to leave, we let them. Okay. One thing that I do want to add to what was said is that Confucius had something really interesting to say about transformation. We never transform to a point where we cease to transform, because that would make transformation, which in the Confucian tradition is utmost. It is the thing of the things, transforming, always transforming. You never want to get to a point where you're like, done. Therein, I think, lies a very valid argument for why we should have our traditions sans the traditionalisms. We should have our storylines, we should have our practices, but be willing to change them, change the words, even if we're saying the same story, change the actions, even if we're participating in the same event. We should be fluid and flexible so that things can shift with time, right? These tables aren't stone anymore. They're wood. And sometimes they're even like, they're like plastic, or sometimes they're like plexiglass. Sometimes it's a fold-out table. We had that for a while when we were outside. But if we got stuck in the Stone Age of tables, we would be needing to find a new table real quick. Things need to shift in accordance with what is demanded of our context and time. Okay, when religions cease to do that, then that's when they become a little bit totalitarian and inflexible. And that's when that paddock shrinks in and becomes more difficult to manage. So what I want to say is religion at the end of the day is a means by which we can participate in a transformation process that's unique to us and our view of the world. Okay, our experience of the world, our stories that have been given to us from childhood. Because even if Christianity isn't necessarily cultural, most of you were probably raised in it to some degree. Okay? Most of us ascribe to it because it's what we know. It's how we see the world. It's how we define forgiveness. It's whatever it is. But so that's why you come here on Sundays. And I can assist in that, explaining to you what it is that you know. Retelling the story at this table. That's what I'm doing. More than anything else, I'm telling you that story that is the foundational marker of why Christianity is even a thing. All right, there's like 15, 20 minutes left. Any questions for the good of the order? Yes, fire emojis. If you guys could hold up little, like you could go home and cut out some fire or smiley face or hearts, and you can hold them up. That'll make me feel like I'm in my social medias. I'm just kidding. Yeah. Thumbs up. Anyone from Facebook? Thumbs up. Yeah. Then everyone will be like, I want a dislike button. Any questions? What's coming up? Okay, let's see. Day 2 is we jump into the lecture, loosely defined, mostly me throwing out some words, you engaging with those words, hopefully asking a lot of questions, on pre-understanding and the dimensions of religions. Yeah, no, absolutely. Pre-understanding and dimensions. We'll look at a quote from the text that you will get next week, and you can read through it at your own leisure. I'll have a quotation up on the screen and also a printout copy so that you can have something to read while I read it out loud. And you mean like the PDF? Yeah, when I'm back in the office with Christy on Tuesday, and I do promise next week I'll be in the office. I was busy translating a lot of German. Right? Okay, so I was writing a paper and it necessitated that I translate a lot of German. But anyway, I'm done with that. I did it. Next week, I'll leave a note and Christy and I will make sure that we get that PDF out.
Have some idea of
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And you can make questions. It'll be like that. If you read through the first few pages, the quotation will come from the first 3 pages. So we'll get it out next week. I refuse to ask Christy to do anything when it's not a work day. I'm very adamant about boundaries. So Tuesday, I'll make sure that you'll get it Tuesday midday probably, I'm sure of it. I'll send her an email that says, for Tuesday. That's what I do in the subject line, meaning don't do it right now. She will do it right now. Well, thank you. No, please, no. It's simple as, it took me a moment. I was like, where's the subjunctive? Just kidding. She didn't put the preposition at the end of the sentence. That means the verb is functioning as it is in the middle. All right. Okay. Right? There is a fantastic meme. I love religious memes, so if you ever stumble across them, send them to me. My favorite religious meme is Jesus standing on a rock saying, everyone pay attention. I definitely don't want 4 versions of this. Oh, I laugh. I still laugh. Like my students were like, sometimes we forget how nerdy you are until a religious meme comes up. But there was another religious meme. I forgot what we're talking about, but it's late. I've been up since 4. But anyway, religious memes. You stumble across them, send them my way. I love them.
He said, tell me about this God that you don't believe in, because I probably don't believe in mine.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I remember the meme. Go ahead. Yeah. It was a definite article meme, and it was like French, what's the definite article for French for neutral? Then it was like Italian, which was like the same, and then it was like German, and it was like die, der, das, des, like it was all of them. And then it was just for English, it was the. It was funny. As the English major in me and the language, and I was laughing. But anyway, why don't you go, yeah.
Old folks like me, 92 years old, it takes me a little longer sometimes to process information.
Yeah.
But you were getting additional information by some male voice.
Yes.
I didn't understand that.
Okay, so
where is that from?
So we have a camera behind us, and we have a Zoom link, which is an app that allows people who don't live here to participate virtually, sort of. John Mark is in Michigan, I think.
I am.
Okay, yeah. And participating in this class. Yeah. And so the voice, or we can just call it God. And it turns
Essentially
out
what the Holy Spirit sounds like.
Yeah. And I can summon God whenever I need an answer to a question about philosophers. Yeah, so that makes sense. I did speak to the ceiling at one point and say, can you talk about...
I did see you look up, and I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah. Right? Oh yeah, we should get John Mark to be in here. There was one time where I didn't know when I was teaching, they had these things that the front desk person could speak through. And all of a sudden I was like teaching, and then I heard, do you have kids?
And I was like, I don't know where that came from. I was like, yes, I have kids, and the students are laughing because they knew exactly what was happening, and they knew that I didn't have a clue. And I was like, yeah, I have kids. Is one of them at downtown? Yes, one of them, and the students, they couldn't take it anymore, and they were like, it's coming from the front desk. They can phone into your room and talk to you directly, but I had no idea. It was just, do you have kids? God? Seriously, you can count all the hairs on my head, but you don't know the number of kids that I have? Yeah, I think so. Anyway, great, yeah. Come with questions, and feel free if you want to, you can send those questions ahead of time, and when we get to the end, I'll just pop them in. All right? Thank you. This has been so encouraging. Oh, right, yeah, I didn't see you on the list.